This is George from iTech Legion. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. If you're a follower of the channel, you know that typically we never do a versus video, but today we're going to change things up a little bit, and we're actually going to do that in two separate segments. One of the reasons being that we've had a lot of people ask, to see the matchup between the new Corsair pieces and the new Swiftech pieces. The second reason being that the new Corsair pieces are actually a very, very important release. Reason being, the last couple of years, the entire CLC market has been a little bit stagnant. We've had the entire Ace-Tech lawsuit thing going on, so we haven't really seen any growth in the field whatsoever in terms of CLCs. Just kind of been the same thing over and over and over again from Ace-Tech with a couple of minor releases. But now we're seeing Corsair releases, which is an entirely different animal. Whether you think Corsair is the best or not, they're certainly the most prevalent in the market. So obviously there's something going on here that's going to be a little bit more important than just a minor release. So today we're going to take a look at the H100i GTX versus the H220-X. We're also going to look at the H110i GT versus the H240X. Now, if you haven't seen our reviews on the H220X and 240X, I'm going to put links down the bottom here. Just click on over, take a look at them, so you're going to have a little bit of what we're talking about as far as these two pieces go, because the in-depth look is going to be at the Corsair pieces today. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everybody went over and took a look at the Swiftech H220X review, so you know exactly what we're talking about here, and we can move right on to the H100i GTX. Obviously, then the H220X is an expandable open-loop unit, so you want to change your tubing out, not a problem. Want to go to tubing that matches your build, want to add a really cool tube reservoir, whatever you want to do, not a problem. Want to add two GPUs and another radiator to it? It can do it. Obviously, Corsair closed loop, it basically is what you got. You're not adding to it, you're not changing it. It is what it is out of the box. And it's a CPU cooler, and that is absolutely fine, and that's exactly what we're going to look at today. But the expandability and customizability of the Swiftech are going to be something that is going to be a big deal to some people. So it's something that we do need to mention. Now, let's start off, looking at the H100i GTX. First off, the H100i has traditionally always been a Cool-It-Made unit. This is not. This is an Ace-Tech made unit. So we've got to change up here. The H110i GT went over from being an Ace-Tech to a Cool-It unit. Now, the H100i, which is really their big selling piece, is now going over to being an Ace-Tech piece. Now that does give me some cause for concern, like I say with the whole Ace-Tech patent thing. Competition, is really where we get strides from as far as technology. And if there's no competition, even if it's friendly, with Corsair repping both companies, things stagnate a little bit, and something we don't want to see. So now, let's take a look. First off, I want to start talking about the radiator itself. Now, first off, Corsair did really a fabulous job on dressing the H100i GTX up. As you can see, the radiator is the Corsair logo on the side, and that is actually removable. They are going to be selling, and of course I just had it off, now I can't get it off. It does actually pop off. They're going to be selling different colors on this. There we go. Pops right off, just pressure fits. Different colors to match different builds, and they're going to be sold separately on the Corsair website. But really, really a nice looking radiator. Nicest we've seen on the CLC so far. Also, pump block, once again, really nice looking. Black, silver theme with the Corsair logo. Once again, lights up, RGB, controllable through Corsair Link. It's great looking there. The tubing itself, really nice mesh covering on the tubing, looks fantastic. Really, like I say, best looking CLC on the market right now, probably by a long shot. It's really a finished looking piece and really stays within the Corsair style itself. So it looks very at home in a Corsair type build. Now let's talk about first about the radiator, like I say. Reason being, Corsair and all the CLCs so far have used all aluminum radiators. Why is that a big deal? Well, you look at it, aluminum has about half the U value, which is thermal dissipation capabilities of copper. So now Swiftech uses a brass copper radiator with a 12 to 13 FPI copper fin structure. Now, what you're getting here, all aluminum, is about a 21 FPI fin structure, so much denser. So theoretically, you're getting about the same amount of dissipation capability. So you think all things would be equal. They're not quite equal in that with the higher FPI, denser fin structure, you need higher RPM fans, more static pressure, and more airflow to get the same capabilities, get the airflow through. This is why, we've had the talks in the past about, CLCs needing to be really loud. And it's not a question of, well, I can change it to quieter fans, because then you lose the static pressure, you lose the airflow, and you lose performance. So you can actually change over to like Noctua fans. We're going to test it with Noctua fans today. And you're going to get better performance to noise, but you're not going to get the same type of overall performance. You can cut down the noise a little bit, but you're not going to be able to do it to a great extent because of that. So that like I say, it's just nature of the beast. Even in discrete liquid cooling components, there are high FPI rads there. Of course they are copper brass, but there are high FPI rads that are made for high RPM applications in the fan. Now with that, the Swiftech has included the SP120L, which is kind of an OEM version of the SP120, high static pressure fan, as you see here. Nice looking fan. Not too ornate. It doesn't have the ring like the regular SP120 has, but overall good looking fan. But now you take a look at the specs on the fan, which are right here on the back of the box, and you've got, it's a, losing it here, 4.65 millimeters of H2O static pressure. That's incredibly high static pressure. 70 CFM at 2435 RPM. So very high speed, very high pressure, but also 37.7 dB. Really high noise. So, like I say, it's a good looking fan, great. It's matched perfectly with the radiator. It's, this is why you've got the high static pressure and high CFM fan matched with this. Now going over to the pump, Acetech pump, as we've seen before. The Acetechs, we haven't actually broken one open and measured it, but a couple of independent labs have, and on various models, they've ranged, typically about a quarter gallon per minute. Now, the Swiftech uses a 1 gallon per minute pump, obviously with higher head pressure, in order to be able to be expandable. But what we have seen also, even in the most basic loops, typically under 0.4, 0.5 gallons per minute, you start losing performance at an incredible rate. So higher flow typically equals higher performance. Once you get over that 0.4, 0.5, you don't gain a whole lot of performance. But like I said, when you go under it, and anyone with the discrete loop, will tell you, who's got a controllable pump, that once you start downclocking that pump below that point, you lose performance, like I said, at an astronomical rate. So if there is, anything in terms of performance, we might, like to see a little bit better pump, included. Now, as far as the cold plate goes, it is the new generation Acetech cold plate. As you see here, nice, really beautifully milled copper. They do a nice job with that. Now, another thing I do want to point out, we did a separate install video. Link is right below right now. And Corsair did a really nice job with the Acetech mounting kit. They did retain, unfortunately, that plastic backplate, but other than that, this was, was really easy to install. One of the easiest we've had to date. You could really do it just about by hand without any tools. We've done Acetechs before by hand without any tools, but this one was just so much easier, especially changing over from Intel to AMD. And this will fit on Intel 1150, 1366, 1150 series, I should say. Yeah, so 1150, 5556, 1366, and 2011. As well as AM2, AM3, FM1, FM2. So you've got a great looking unit here. And, really it's poised to, take on the H220X. Obviously, it's not going to take it on in terms of expandability, not going to take it on in terms of noise level, but it's, definitely equipped that, we should see some good results as far as performance. So now, first off, let's take a look at the noise. I did tell you, it's going to have to be louder. There's just no way around it. So let's look at the noise results right now. First, a look at the Swiftech H220-X. This is with the fans at maximum, pump at maximum also. So as you see, it's coming in right around 46 dB.
And as you can see, the H100i is topping out right around 57 dB. But as you can hear, that 10 dB is a pretty huge difference.
Now, getting into our performance test results, we used Ada64 for stress testing, CPU plus FPU for 15 minutes. The results you see here are actually core temps taken at the 15-minute mark, all 4 cores averaged. Now, getting into it here, looking at the H100i GTX, we ran it in push and in pull. And it doesn't do too bad of a job. You know, you're 2.5, 3 degrees off from the Swiftech H220-X. Obviously, you've got that big difference in noise level, though, 11 and 12 dB. So while it's, you know, pretty much keeping up with it and keeping up closer than I thought it was going to, as far as overall performance, you know, the noise performance is way, way off. Now, moving over, we're going to show these as far as a delta temp as well. Fortunately, I was fortunate enough to be working in a temperature-controlled data room, so the temperature stayed a constant 22.2 degrees outside of the case, and you've got the delta between the ambient room temperature and the core temperature itself. Stays, you know, the numbers themselves stay pretty much the same as far as differences go, since the obviously didn't have any variance in the outside temperature. Now, moving on, looking at the cooler intake delta, what that actually is, that is the difference in the air temperature actually going into the cooler itself, right at the point of fan, and the core temperature. This shows the actual cooler efficiency. So, you know, if you're getting, you know, 50-degree air in and 100-degree core temp, you've got a delta of 50 degrees. So it shows what the cooler is actually doing. Now, looking at that, again, you've got a 2 to 2.5 degree difference. So, you know, the Corsair is actually really keeping up nicely with the H220-X as far as that goes. And actually, no problems at all there. One thing I do want to note, though, the H100i GTX ran about a degree warmer in the case in all our tests, kind of when it was in pull. Kind of odd, but, you know, just something to note. No big deal. You know, we're talking about 1 degree there. And it actually ran cooler overall, or I should say the delta was actually a little bit better. So that actually, you know, helps the delta temp a bit. But again, you know, you do have that big difference in noise levels. Now, equalizing the noise levels, bringing everything down to 40 dB, which is, you know, a livable type of noise level, something, you know, that's not going to have you screaming, you know, when you're next to it and not able to hear yourself. We took the H100i GTX down to 1375 RPM, which brought it down to 40 dB. Swiftech brought that down to 40 dB, and you notice there, you start seeing a pretty big gap. 5.5 degrees between the Swiftech H220-X and the H100i GTX. When you start starving that high FPM radiator of airflow, it's going to suffer. There's no question about that. So, you know, you start to see a bigger gap, you know, like I say, in the performance. Now, of course, we've all heard, you know, the stories of, you know, what happens when you put a Noctua on a CLC and the temps drop, you know, 45 degrees and all that. And obviously not true. You know, the high FPI radiator, it needs high CFM, it needs high static pressure. So giving it less airflow and static pressure will not make it perform better. There's just no way around that. Now, putting the Noctua NF F12s on the H100i GTX, tried them in push and in pull. Obviously, the temperatures do go up a little bit, but the noise levels come down dramatically. Now, while you don't get better overall performance, you get much, much better noise to performance. What we got was, you know, good temperatures, good noise levels, you know, and it stayed, you know, a very well, you know, good performing cooler throughout. Now, the Swiftech, you know, throwing the Noctuas on there really doesn't affect it at all. The Helix fans that come with it are almost identical to the Noctuas as far as, you know, airflow, static pressure, noise, you know, very, very similar fans. So you wind up with the same performance out of the Swiftech. Now, what you do wind up with the H100i GTX is much better noise to performance, like I say, and you do get a much better all-around cooler switching to the Noctuas. But once again, you know, you're looking at $50 worth of fans added to the $120 price, so you're now looking at $170 on a CLC, and you know that's $30 more than the Swiftech, and you're still not getting the performance of the Swiftech. Like I say, though, you know, it does make for you know, a really nice
well-behaved cooler all around when you put the Noctuas on it.
So having a look through all the performance numbers and the noise especially, we knew going in that this wasn't necessarily going to be a fair fight. People were asking for it, but I knew, that really you're looking at two different animals here. The Swiftech really is far more advanced than any of the CLCs on the market. And, Corsair, like I say, it's top name in CLCs. And, it's not going to be able to keep up with something like the Swiftech H220-X, in terms of performance, noise performance. But, like I say, you do have the trade-off. The Swiftech is going to need maintenance occasionally. The first 3 years, that maintenance is, literally next to nothing. Like I say, pop off the fill port and, put a little distilled water in it, for the first 3 years, if you even have to, which you may not. After that, you are going to have to bleed and drain it, or I should say drain it, refill it, bleed it, change out the tubing. But, by then you might be ready to do something like that. But like I say, so, in a head-to-head, not a fair fight. Swiftech really, like I say, much more advanced piece. Well, let's talk about the H100i GTX itself. I wasn't surprised. Well, first of all, I should say I was surprised when I opened it up and saw it was an Ace-Tech. The H100i and, the H100 series, their 240mm series, was always traditionally a cooler piece. Now, open it up, see it's an Ace-Tech, and I'm not really surprised that it outperformed the last generation of H100i, simply because, well, the Ace-Techs have always traditionally been better performing coolers. Now, so you've got the H100i GTX, a little bit better than the last generation, as I say. One of the top performing, if not the top performing 240mm CLC on the market. However, it is loud. There's no way around that. You compare it to something like Cooler Master Neptune 240M, and the Neptune 240M is distinctly quieter and offers right about the same performance level. It's also a little bit cheaper, and really the price on the H100i GTX is another matter, and why this got brought in here. You would think that there would be, a big price disparity between these two pieces, given all the flexibility of the Swiftech, given the better performance, given the quieter performance, and the problem is there's not a big price difference. I think Corsair, I think the whole CLC market in general needs to really get, more of a handle on pricing it out to where it should be, in terms of performance. Because of course you're going to pay a premium for, the liquid CLC cooling over air cooling, just naturally. But, now that you've got pieces like Swiftech, you've got the Cooler Master Neptunes, the pricing needs to get a little bit more under control and, fall into line a little bit better. But other than that, I mean, the H100i GTX had a very, very nice showing for itself, no question. Like I say, possibly the top performing 240mm cooler on the market. Fantastic looking, really great looking, in the case, especially if you're doing a Corsair build. And with that said, I'm going to give the H100i GTX a High-Tech Legion Gold Award. Like I say, it's a little loud, price is a little high, but looks fabulous, easy to use. One of the top performing 240mm CLCs on its, on the market. So you've got some give and take there. It does use Corsair Link. Personally, I'm not a big fan. Some people love it, some people hate it, but you don't have to use Corsair Link with it either. You can actually bypass Corsair Link and use the software in your motherboard, which I think makes it a little bit less cumbersome, a little bit easier to use. So other than that, no complaints, really at all. And, pretty much what we expected here. Actually, probably a little better than what I expected, like I say, going up against the H220X. So once again, High-Tech Legion Gold Award for the H100i GTX.